Sometimes when you think you've seen everything, you really haven't seen anything. We all thought we had James Franklin pegged. Great recruiter, great coach in winning games he's supposed to win, poor big game coach. It turns out it ain't that simple. You can justify losing to a team like Oregon. You can justify losing to a team like Ohio State a million times because they're just that good. You can justify losing to Michigan in Jim Harbaugh's heyday. Losing to 0-4 UCLA, the worst team in Power 4, a team that had just fired its head coach and both coordinators, a team that lost by 25 points at home to New Mexico. No, you can't really justify that. You just can't. We're going to talk about it. Joe Smeltzer, Nittany Sports Now, joined as always by Kyle Fatman Golick and Nittany Sports Now, Jay Hollahan, Mike Frill Sports also doubles as our producer. Uh, Fellas, we've all seen it by now. We've had time to digest it. What the hell happened?
Joe, so Saturday, as you know, Joe, in our audience, I was doing an annual fundraiser, and I had the game on a reverse projector up there. So I'm thinking, this is going to be one of those games where I can check in once in a while just to see Penn State do well. I can go mingling. It didn't. It turned out to be a disaster on that front for me. And here's the thing. Everything that's been problematic with this team this season shined bright. I guess you can call it shine bright in this game. The slow starts. One of the things I talked to you, Joe, about was this was the fourth straight game that Penn State did not get 10 points in the first quarter. Now, look, I get you're not going to get 10 points in a quarter, usually against Oregon. Got it. But Florida International, Villanova, a UCLA team that was ranked in the bottom 100, like they were in the hundreds in both offense and defensive metrics. Like that was wrong. The whole situation of Iamal Love, I can never say his name. You're going to probably kill me this whole entire time.
You just call him Nico.
I'm going to call him Nico just so that I don't embarrass myself. But Nico looked like a poor man's version of Vince Young torturing souls in the Rose Bowl, because that's where Vince Young had some of his greatest things, and Nico sure as heck looked like that. Saturday. One of the things, friend of the show, Landon Tagwell, he was ripping on the UCLA linebackers early in the week. And if you read my column on my preview, I should say, on Friday about getting to know UCLA, I profiled two of the linebackers on there. And both those linebackers, John Vaughns and can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but they had major impact in the game here. And I just, this was a team that did everything everyone else was doing to Penn State. They shortened the game. They were extremely aggressive. Penn State was sleepwalking, and just nothing went right whatsoever. Jay?
Yeah, so like Kyle, I thought the same thing. I was at work, had the game on as we were rolling T-shirts to toss to fans for the Philadelphia Union. I thought that it was going to be a walk in the park, and it was every bit the opposite. I think the Illinois loss, the however many overtimes that game went to in 21, the Temple loss in 2015, I thought that was 9. Thanks, Joe. I thought that was probably the worst of it for James Franklin. This takes the cake with the amount of hype that this team had heading into the year. If you were to tell me that Penn State and Texas too would be unranked in early October and their playoff hopes would be dashed, I would have thought something catastrophic happened. And from the sounds of James Franklin, it seemed like the only thing he really blamed the loss on, or really could put the loss on, was travel, and losing Tony Rojas as well was another thing. And I get it. Losing Tony Rojas, it was going to be a problem. I thought there was probably going to be a chance they wouldn't cover the 24.5 point spread because maybe it would take their linebackers some time to adjust. Maybe UCLA would end up making it like a 31-10 game or something. They get like a backdoor cover. I don't know. But to just lose and embarrass yourself and let them score 42 points and a defensive coordinator that, I mean, I thought was, and we had all been led to believe that he was the second coming. It's inexcusable. It really is.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about Tony Rojas, because that's been used as an excuse by a portion of the beat, and he's to borrow James Franklin's favorite catchphrase over the past 2 weeks. I get it, right? He's a good football player. He's a guy that's going to be playing on Sundays. He was playing the best football of his career. At the same time, though, injuries happen, and if you're a national championship caliber team, which everybody thought Penn State was coming into the season, one injury should not ruin everything. Case in point, last season. This is part of why I've been labeled a Tom Allen apologist. KJ Winston, hell of a football player, missed the whole season except for one game and a itty bitty portion of a second game. Penn State still put out a top 10 defense. Now, that defense didn't play well in the Big Ten championship game and didn't play well against Notre Dame in the semifinal. But the point is, the team still got to those situations despite losing a great player in KJ Winston. So you can talk about schematics, and we're going to talk about schematics later on this episode. But spare me with Tony Rojas being the reason Penn State lost to UCLA, for crying out loud.
Yeah, Tony, his loss is immense, and the amazing athleticism of being able to go sideline to sideline. And again, we'll talk about it in the next segment. But it goes to show in this system, and I love Dom.DeLuca to death. Dom has always been very stand up with us, with the media. He tells it like it is. He has an amazing story. I mean, he's gone from walk-on to a 3-time captain, I believe, at Penn State. Am I right on that, Joe?
Yeah, and he wouldn't be a walk-on, if he were a guy that was known for his speed. Walk-on linebackers generally are not known for that.
Okay. So this guy's story is unbelievable. He is I will always say he's a Nittany line. And, what I'm about to say hurts, but it's like, he's simply not good enough to be in that role. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the ability, the range that Rojas and Campbell possess.
Yep.
And he, I give him all the credit in the world that he has the courage to go out and do his absolute best in a situation that's probably not best for him. But this, it makes you wonder what's going on with like Keon Wiley, what's going on with Anthony Specca, what's going on with Dakari Nelson,
Alex Tatch. That's probably the big one. That's the one we all expected to see Saturday.
I'm going to the well when I say LeVar too, but I mean it's fair. It really is. I mean Abdul Carter as a true freshman lined up as out there, so it's not a foreign concept. I had people today think that I was crazy suggesting a true freshman against 23-year-olds in a Big Ten. It can't work. And I'm just sitting there going, Abdul Carter did it in 2022. What are you talking about? If the guy got the skill, why?
You got a true freshman playing at defensive end right now.
Mm-hmm. Chaz Coleman at edge. You got Darius Dixon in rotation at corner. Guys, this isn't Joe Pa's 1970s when freshmen are ineligible. Freshmen make an impact. There is no doubt in my mind that Alex Tatch, who has been getting some top-level reps, could have done a better job out there. Or, this is what Knowles told me at Big Ten Media Day. I asked about the 2-linebacker scheme. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth in the next segment, but he said there will be times there will be 3 linebackers on the field. Hey, Joe, did you check out the snap report on Sunday or Monday for UCLA? Do you know how many linebackers participated for Penn State on Saturday?
Was it only 2 linebackers?
Ding, 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 ding. 2. And we know which two they are. So, guys, I don't know what's going on. Here's the thing. You could go onto YouTube, our audience, find a Jim Knowles video that I asked him. You can see it for yourself. He said, we will use 3 linebackers. But Dan Connor even said the same thing. So what's going on?
They were using them. They were using 3 linebackers throughout the season for playing UCLA.
Yeah, I think it just reflected how poor the linebacker depth is. I mean, we knew it in the spring because they obviously went out and got Amari Campbell, but that was the spring. I thought by fall camp, they would have at least had it figured out. They would have had some depth there. That way, if, God forbid one gets hurt, you have someone else. And it didn't happen. It's unbelievable for a linebacker, mind you.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said a bit ago. This wasn't a mystery. James has said it all off season, from the blue-white game, the media days, to the Penn State local media day, etc. We need linebackers. You got Amari Campbell in. So what should have been your priority? Can we fast-track one of these freshmen? Does someone get it? Apparently Tatch gets it, so why aren't we seeing him? What's going on with Keon Wiley? Why doesn't he get it? Dakari Nelson pivoted from being a safety to a linebacker. What is happening in that situation? There is so much. Why are we saving LeVar too? Like, when I was at the one practice after media day, LeVar too was holding his own both in the drills, and I watched a thing. I was beside a friend of the show, Zach Seiko from Locked On, and I watched Nick Singleton, we'll talk about him later, and LeVar 2 engage. And look, LeVar 2 looked like he belonged. I get that's practice, but the fact that the team did not even try to get him involved in the first 3 out of conference games, that's a shame and a misuse of opportunity of developing experience and getting valuable reps to the youngins.
Well, I have plenty to say about what you just alluded to, Kyle. Nick Singleton, more talk about the defense because it was just that bad on segment 2 of this interesting, we'll say to say the least, episode of Joe and the Fat Man. Yeah, sorry, my charge kind of snuck up on me. I'll just go take care of that real quick.
All good.
Yeah, we'll make up the time in the second.
All right.
So second segment, we're talking linebackers, right?
Yes. Oh, I guess maybe I kind of jumped the gun there to start, but.
And in the third segment, we need to talk linebackers and we need to talk running backs a little bit.
Yeah.
The third segment is big picture, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because I got some pretty compelling stuff. I just want to make sure. So how's Jay been?
Oh, not too bad. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Had a great fundraiser. We fundraised for, so my grotto, our foundation is the Humanitarian Foundation that aids with pediatric dentistry issues and oral issues. Okay. And the Eastern Star chapter is a women's auxiliary, and they do what is called Light of Life mission. So their job, Light of Life, is a homeless shelter in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And there's a facet of it. So like if a woman goes down and they need help, say they need, hey, I need a new refrigerator for my house, and that's going to keep me keep me afloat so that I don't get homeless and lose out. Light of Life does that. They try to keep them from being homeless and try to keep a woman's dignity together. So we were able to raise, just under 10,000. Like nice. It was like 9,200.
Nice.
mean, we had some bills, but I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of goes with it.
Yeah. I guess you were thinking I won't really have to spend too much time on the Penn State game like I was thinking. Because I had work.
Yeah, when I planned for that fundraiser, I said Penn State's going to just absolutely administer belt to ass to UCLA, and I just said, that's an automatic for me.
Yep.
So I felt that was safe.
Yep. Me too.
Because it was a road game and all the above.
I went to my school's homecoming because of the same reason.
Yeah.
Dude, I was so pissed.
Yeah. Joe, your screen's black.
Yeah, I gotta see if my camera's on. Yeah, shit, come on.
Hey, I see your keyboard, Joe.
There you go, Joe.
Yeah, I don't.
Command key.
I don't know what the issue. I don't know why it's not on me. How do I get my camera to go to like myself?
There.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Joe, that's a fancy living room there, bud.
Yeah, I just wish we could see my face. What the fuck?
I'm not laughing at you, I promise.
No, you're good. It's like
And there he goes.
For as crappy as a weekend as this was, this is at least really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe, do you play the piano, bud? There you are. I see you.
All right, I'll take it. All right, I'm going into my room.
You look like you should have like a glass of scotch with you.
Dude, that's a big layer, Joe.
I'll go into my room. We won't have this freaking light. No, that's not going to work. This will be fine.
Jay, if you had a setup like that, would you be pumped?
Oh my god, I would love a setup like that.
All right, good enough, I guess. Are we about ready?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another segment of Joe and the Fat Man. Joe Smeltzer, Kyle Fatman Golick, Jay Hallahan with you. 2 nights after Penn State's pathetic, embarrassing, whatever you want to call it, loss at hapless, previously hapless. Now they have one hap, the one win being against Penn State. In the first segment, we talked about Jim Knowles and the defense giving up 42 points to a novice coordinator. And we're going to talk about the offense too. And obviously, James Franklin, Andy Kotelnicki is not blameless. James Franklin certainly is not blameless. But talking further about Knowles, Fat Man, I want to give this to you because obviously you're big on X's and O's, right? You know when a scheme isn't working, you know what it is working. So how much of Penn State's problems from a defensive standpoint Saturday were because of players just not doing their jobs, and how much of it was Jim Knowles not being able to adjust to losing a key player in Tony Rojas?
So I'm going to answer it like this. I feel the percentage on the players who weren't capable of executing at what is necessary for the defense to be effective is very high, probably them all, and it's for varying reasons. So I think there's something more wrong with Dennis Sutton. He doesn't look like, when I rewatched the game Saturday night into Sunday morning after the game 2 of Penn State men's hockey and Arizona State, it just seemed to me, and I'm so used to seeing Denny just being very explosive, like can really run down through the offensive line and be a very impactful player in the backfield. We saw that in week 1 against Nevada, where the average tackle he was making at the hit was 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. There's something that's slowing him. When you look at the opposite edge situation, so there's probably a freshman ceiling that Chaz Coleman's hitting. So they're trying to, rotate him with Zariah Fisher. And look, I love Zariah to death. He's a fantastic kid from out here in Aliquippa, but I really think the injuries have set their toll on him. He's doing well. He doesn't have that effective of a bend coming around the tackle, and I don't know if the speed is all there, because again, the guy's been often injured, so you lose that step. I mean, he's done a fantastic job getting there. Zane Durant, there's something amiss with him. He had that false start penalty that was absolutely brutal, but it just feels like
offside. False start is on the offense.
Oh yes, my bad on that. I'm thinking Nick Dawkins in my head. So you start, I don't think he has the right defensive tackle opposite of him. So it just seems like every time I watch and Joe, tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm gonna get a little bit into the schemes here. It just seemed every time until maybe into the fourth quarter, when Penn State started to be able to make some stops and make a few plays, it just seemed like when UCLA ran, whether it was with their back or whether it was with Nico, it just seemed that by the time like someone came to meet that Bruin runner, they had already been 3 or 4 yards across the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, you're mentioning the deficiencies with the players. What do you think Jim Knowles could have and should have done differently to work around all this? Because there's got to be some blame at the coordinator for.
So here's my blame, and that's what I was going to get into, where the scheme failed for him. You don't have the dynamic athletes at linebacker that have the range to cover sideline to sideline, and they're not in God bless Dom. He's absolutely fantastic, but there's a speed element to this leverage strategy in this 4-2-5 stack. Dom doesn't have it. It's, he is good in certain situations that are obvious rundowns, but when you're in a situation where, it's pass and you got to go into a pass zone, that's what happened a lot of the time against UCLA. When Dom went out there, when it was a quote unquote spy situation, did you ever realize that Nico always ran towards where Dom was, and when Dom went into coverage?
Yeah, that's what Franklin mentioned after the game.
So Dom doesn't have the closing speed. So it goes back to what I was saying in segment 1, Joe and Jay, when I asked, part of the reason I asked Knowles about the three linebackers is what a lot of the things you guys alluded to. We've have injuries. We're not deep here. Penn State would have benefited even if a Dakari Nelson, an Alex Tatch, if they had a third linebacker, and even if you said, hey, Dakari, your job is to simply watch Nico, and Dom and Amari handled the rest of the field beyond the line there between them and the safeties, I think they would have not allowed so many explosive plays and I think they could have won this game. I mean, I think it would have been maybe a 35-25 type affair, but that was there for them because every time I saw Nico go on a big run or any UCLA runner, there was nobody within like 20 yards, in the hole there. And when Nico hit it, there was nothing that was going to stop him. He was already gone for 20 to 30 yards. And the thing is, when you got into the safety situations, and they're not used to this, a lot of the time those safeties were hitting high, not in very good leverage situations. I saw A.J. Harris have a hard time tackling. I saw each of the safeties have a hard time tackling because it's like, oh my God, this guy's already like 25 yards downfield. They're more into this coverage in zone situation. I mean, Zaki was starting to play up on the line to aid the linebackers, but it was a little too late once they made that adjustment. So I think a lot that I blame Knowles on, and James is, okay, I got Knowles on record saying we have schemes with three linebackers. Okay, you don't have that speed there on the line. You were supposedly working on this all summer, the first few weeks, when you absolutely needed someone in there, that extra support there, you weren't ready. So I blame Knowles for that.
And we've gone about a half hour into this episode without mentioning the absolute, and we'll borrow a phrase from friend of the show, Landon Tingwall, coaching malpractice on the offensive end, and that is the curious usage of Katron Allen. The good news for Penn State Saturday, Katron Allen averaged 6.3 yards per carry and scored 2 touchdowns. The bad news was he only touched the ball 8 times, and a guy who was averaging almost literally half of his yards per carry for the season, Nick Singleton, got the ball 11 times, and probably the biggest indicator of how poorly Allen is being used came on what ended up being Penn State's last offensive play that mattered, and that was the 4th and 2 deep in UCLA territory. Decided to have a read option play where the options were Drew Aller and Trevor Pena. That got stuffed. Katron Allen was nowhere to be seen on the field. This is something we've talked about plenty, and it hasn't gone any better. Just what do you make of this, and what do you make of Franklin's explanation when pressed about it in his Monday presser, which was basically, yeah, we've talked about using Katron more, and he left it at that.
His explanation was weak today. There is no doubt about it. So I can't remember who asked him, if it was one of the on-3 guys or whatnot. They were saying that they don't look at plays or snaps, they look at touches. I believe that's what it was. Joe, can you confirm that if you recall?
Yeah, he was asked 2 Katron questions. The first was by Bob Flounders of Penn Live, and I think Tyler Donahue asked the second one.
Okay, so for me, this is, I'm all about where you have the opportunity to try to get a guy going, but you've attempted this now for 3 or 4 games. At some point, it's not working, and it doesn't take a rocket science. Like I could have my wife look at this, and I'm not trying to put our lady fans down, but she could look at this and go, why it does on the season Nick Singleton has 9 more carries overall than Katron Allen. It's not even close. Right now, Katron Allen is averaging 7 yards a carry on 54 touches. Nick Singleton is 3.8 yards on 63 touches. It's not even close. It's not. It would be one thing if it was reversed and you had Katron, maybe he's in short yardage situation. That's how you can explain it. But Nick's expected to be the home run hitter, and he's yet to go yard.
Yeah, and I mean, after the Oregon loss, I mean, Katron really exploded at the end of that Oregon game. He has been the most consistent offensive player, it feels like, for Penn State. Why are you not trying to carry that over into UCLA? It makes absolute zero sense. And the disappearance of Nick Singleton is truly mind-boggling.
And part of it too, I think, like, Franklin has a certain loyalty to certain players, which, if you're loyal to a fault overall, that's fine. But where has this been with the coaches? You know, he had John Donovan, worked at it with him at Vanderbilt, had no problem firing him after 2015, had no problem firing Mike Yurcich in the middle of the season, no problem firing Taylor Stubblefield about 2 weeks after they won the Rose Bowl. Franklin can be ruthless when it comes to his colleagues in coaching, but why does it have to be different with players? I don't think it makes any sense. And I think part of this usage of Nick Singleton has to do with the fact that Nick Singleton was his first three seasons at Penn State.
Yeah, I would probably gander to say that's the reason why. I mean, you know, Singleton, and one thing that Penn State fans really are going to have to wonder for the next couple of weeks, you know, is there going to be motivation for these guys to continue to play hard game in and game out before they just start checking out and not playing as a team too?
And a big thing for me with Nick is, you know, the guy is an all-time Penn State back. I think when you're in a top 10 all-time of anything at a program like Penn State, it says it. But at some point, you know, it's starting to become detrimental to the team's overall success because you aren't effective enough. And maybe this is where Coach Drayton and Coach Kotelnicki have to start figuring out how to get Nick into situations where he can be successful. Because right now, the situations they're trying to use him in to be successful, they're not working. So I think if you can get them into some sort of route trees, if you can get them into something, it'll help. But what Katron Allen at least needs to be getting 15 to 20 touches a game. I think that is non-negotiable at this point.
And I think with both Nick and Katron too is like how they are with the media. Well, I shouldn't say how they are with the media, but what we get to see of them away from football when we talk to them is both reflective in their games. Nick Singleton, if you ever talk to him in person, he's a meticulous thinker. You can tell he thinks out his questions when he answers them. And not that Katron doesn't, but with Katron, it's more of like an easygoing type of deal. And you just get the vibe that he's a guy that loves playing football, cherishes every moment, and he doesn't really think too much when he's on the field. It's just like, you know, just run the ball. If a guy gets in my way, I'm going to run it over, and that's that. He has a blast playing the game. I don't know how much fun Nick Singleton has playing the game. I think this is based on what James Franklin, Stan Drayton, and Nick Singleton himself has said to us over various media availabilities. So word overthinking is a lot. Franklin put it well when saying, you know, in practice, that's when you have to think. Saturday, you got to let it loose. I don't think Katron Allen has ever had a problem letting it loose on the field. I think Nick Singleton does. And I think what we kind of see with them personality-wise when we talk with them in the media, that is reflective on the field. And that's something that I think is very beneficial to Katron Allen. And with Nick Singleton, I just think the guy gets in his own head too much, and that leads to indecisiveness, and that leads to you know, the guy we've seen in 2022 and 2024 become more what we saw in 2023, which was his worst season so far. And if it keeps going this way in 2025, that's going to be his worst season.
The thing with Nick, and you know, I think Drew's starting to get the memo here. You know, I would go on my phone and I would see all these ads with Nick Singleton on them. And one of the things I'm going to say to Nick is cash is, coffee's for closers. It's the famous line from Glengarry Glen Ross. And here's the thing, Nick, you got to win and you got to produce if you want to continue being out there in front of it. Because obviously he has a bunch of NIL deals. So if it's a business decision, okay, Nick, you got to figure this out, man. You're hurting your own brand, and I'm just looking out for you. So it's like at this point, they need to find something to make him successful, Joe. and Katron needs to be getting there. And look, maybe we need to start looking at Cam Wallace or Corey Smith or Quentin Martin there and see who can maybe rotate in there, because Penn State needs to have two healthy backs that can produce. Maybe Nick has to be in an H-back role or some sort of athlete role. So that's where I'm at on that, guys.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about the head honcho, James Franklin, in our next segment, and it's going to be a topic that before Saturday, mostly only crazy, expecting too much fans had talked about. Now it's more than that. I think you know where we're going. Stay tuned.
This segment's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Say a prayer.
That is, yeah. I mean, I guess the buyout. Well,
I was explaining the buyout to my bartender at Waynesburg. So,
yeah.
Oh, right, we're ready to rock this out.
yeah.
Yep.
I did not realize how absurd 56 million was until I saw what the other biggest buyouts have been.
Yeah.
I'm looking up the buyout numbers just to make sure I have this correct.
I believe it's 56 right now, and it's January 1, it's 48.
I think you're right.
Yeah, which they're not going to wait till January. That'd be stupid. I don't think they're going to do it at all, but if they do it, they're not going to wait till January. I'll give out my idea of what is going to happen.
Oh, fucking Jared. Oh. Jared's been blowing my phone up one way or another. Did you see what his last text was, Joe?
Yeah, about Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm not worried about it. If Penn State keeps tanking, there's going to be plenty of seats.
Oh, yeah.
Alan told me applying 3 weeks before was unheard of for a road game. That's what the phrase he used was.
I'm with them.
All right. All right. I got the buyout data. I'm ready. All right.
I'm ready too.
3, 2, 1. The Fire Franklin people have more ammunition than ever before. I don't think this can be disputed with what the 2025 team was expected to do and what they have done so far. The problem is it costs a lot of money. It would cost a lot of money for Penn State to move on from their head coach of 12 years. James Franklin's buyout is $56 million. Next year, it will be $48 million, and it's going to go down by $8 million every year until his contract runs out. To put that into perspective, the highest buyout ever for a coach that was fired was Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M, which was $77.5 million. The second highest buyout of a coach that was fired, and this is where I think the perspective really sets in on how much $56 million is. Auburn fired Gus Malzahn. $22 million was that buyout. So yeah, it would be very expensive. I have my ideas for what has to happen if James Franklin is to not be the head coach of Penn State next year. But fellas, what's your take? Should Penn State bite the bullet, fire Franklin, cost him $56 million? Should they stick it out with him? Should there be another solution? What do you guys think? Assuming they do not make the college football playoff.
I'm gonna let Jay go first, and then I will go because I have a pretty interesting case.
So for me, I mean, I'm gonna air kind of what Jason Kabinda said on Twitter today. It's too much. I don't know if the risk is worth it, because at the end of the day, you're gonna sacrifice like at least 2 seasons of really being mediocre, and probably winning 6-7 games with someone that who knows if they can do it or not. And at a school like Penn State, I don't know if that's the right move. However, I understand people that say and are willing to do it because, yeah, I mean, at this point, you're not going any further. I think we all pretty much know that this is not, because with this team, with this amount of talent, this was the best chance he had. And mind you, they lose 2 once-in-a-generation like players in Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren. We've seen what has happened in the past when he's lost 2 once-in-a-generation talents like Saquon Barkley and Michael Parsons, and he just can't get the job done with just really good players. He just can't form a team that's able to go and make a deep run into the college football playoffs or before even get to the college football playoffs. So I get both sides of it. I err towards the side of I don't think they should bite the bullet yet, but I don't know. I'm curious what Kyle has to say on this.
Sorry, my mouse wasn't working there. So I'm going to start in one spot, and then I'm going to bring it full circle. I wrote in my column about the glass jaw, and that's what this team has right now, from its coach all the way down. I've been between a fan and a writer and who's covered this team in both aspects of my life since the early 90s. So since I was a little kid till now, with me going and covering this team, being a big boy. And I've seen some bad losses, but this one was the absolute worst in program history. And it makes it bad for a slew of reasons, between, Penn State being in the top 10, UCLA being in disarray, UCLA being, they hadn't held a lead all year. And, they were in the bottom 100. And, the problem James Franklin has, guys, is this. His margin for error on these unranked games is 0. And do you know why it's 0, guys? Because what has been sold to us for pretty much the entirety of the James Franklin era is
winning is hard. We don't take it for granted.
We're going to go 10-2. I'm going to beat everyone that I'm supposed to, but I'm never going to beat the Ohio States, the Oregons, the Michigans, the Notre Dames, etc. Okay, that's kind of the deal he made with the devil. Okay, so when he loses a game like this, there is no margin for error for him, because you've proven you can't win the big ones. You aren't winning these little ones. This is why everyone's upset with you, James. Because here's the thing, and I'm going to go back to the history bank here, guys. So, Joe Paterno, who coached here, and I'm going to throw, 4 examples out at you guys of 4 times it blew up. But we all know why it didn't destroy Joe's, because he had the proclivity of showing he could win the big games. But here are 4 examples, and you probably would say, yeah, these are just as bad. So think about this. In 1983, all right, after they were defending national champions, they lose in the Meadowlands to Nebraska 44-6. The next week, they lose in Beaver Stadium to 1AA Cincinnati 14-3. Okay, 1991. That's a team a lot of fans, have a reverence for, because it finished number 3 in the nation behind the co-national champs Miami and Washington. But one of the things is, in week 1, they defeated the reigning national champion Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in the Meadowlands. And then the next week they beat Cincinnati 81-0, which we all know why that score is famous. But the very next week, guys, they went to the Coliseum out in Los Angeles and lost to a USC team that would go 3-8. Okay, 1995, Penn State had the nation's longest winning streak in the country, 20 games in a row. And they lost to a Wisconsin team that would go 4-5-2. All right. And then let's bring up just 2000 Toledo, just because that was absolutely, to this day, is probably one of the more shocking losses. Obviously, we know hindsight about that. That was like a turning point in the dead era. But at the time, that was unreal. Joe Paterno was able to recover, guys, because he demonstrated wins in the big games. Now, kind of closing up my point here, what I don't like, what I'm seeing from James Franklin since the Oregon post game, all UCLA week, and now to starting the Northwestern week, is he is in such mental defeatist disarray. Like when Mike Poorman asked him at the end about the scouting report and just his answers, his answers all today were all defeatist. Everything you do as a leader emanates from the top. So if you're sitting there and you're just, showing to the world that you're defeated and you're just not engaged with it, it's gonna affect your coordinators, your assistant coaches, and your players. To officially wrap this up here, guys, and this is something to appreciate with James Franklin. Okay, this is not about the money at this point. But think of it like this. Grant you, we're all mad about UCLA. But think about this. The last 3 years were the most successful 3-year run for wins since the early 1980s. Okay? Penn State right now is one of 3 programs, along with Alabama and Georgia, to send 5 or more players to 7 consecutive NFL drafts. They set a program record last year, okay, with 13 wins in a season, made their first ever college football playoff. The loss to UCLA snapped a 34-game winning streak Franklin had against unranked opponents. If I were to tell you that Joe Paterno's best streak against unranked opponents of winning consecutive was 33, and that happened between 1970 and 1974. He had 5 streaks in his career where he had unbeaten streaks against unranked teams. He had 28 between 67 to 70, 33 from 70 to 74, 28 from 85 to 88, 20 from 91 to 95, and then 27 from 2005 to 2008. There's something to be said, guys, about Franklin getting 34 in a row against that. That's impressive regardless. I mean, I know people look at what Nick Saban did at Alabama with that 100. Steve Spurrier had 72 down in Florida, and those were records at a point. But that's very impressive when you're doing something at that level. I'm going to say this like this. The only way I say James Franklin goes is if he doesn't change his attitude and doesn't get back to that instinct of wanting to win and being hungry and being the right leader. If this team completely collapses and has like a Brian Kelly, I think 2016 or 2017 Notre Dame team that went 3-9, I don't think there's no way he survives. But if this is a team that fights back and goes 9-3, even though this season was an abject failure, you're not spending $48 million, $50 million to get rid of them.
Yeah, I agree that they're not going to pay that buyout. I think the only way, this is what I think will happen. I think the only way that James Franklin isn't coaching Penn State in 2026 is if Pat Kraft convinces him that James Franklin would be doing himself a service to take another coaching job. I think there are a few selling points. If Penn State doesn't want Franklin back, they could say, hey, your team next year probably isn't going to be very good. You've been here a long time. You've taken this thing as far as you're going to take it. You're still a relatively young guy for the profession at 52. It's in your best interest to take a new job where you're not going to get booed off the field after every home loss, to where you could build the program again, like you did here, like you did at Vanderbilt. And they have to convince them that way. That's the only way I think Franklin does leave. What I think will happen is that they stay the course and running back with him next year. What I think should happen is that they do their damnedest to convince him to let him walk, because I don't think the teams next year and the year after that are going to be very good with or without James Franklin. And if you're gonna take a step back, do it with some new blood instead of a guy who I think has already proven that he can't take him to the next level. So we'll be able to talk about this for the next several months. That's just my thoughts right now.
Joe, there's part of me that agrees with you in the aspect that I think for both sides, think of in Jay, you can probably speak to this better than the both of us. This is like the Philadelphia Eagles and Andy Reid.
Yeah, I agree.
Together,
great comparison.
I was thinking this exact thing last night, Kyle, actually.
Together.
I'll let you finish your point. I'm sorry, but you mentioned Andy Reid, and I was thinking, we've talked so much about how college athletes should be treated like pro athletes. Now, what about the coaches, though? Because if Franklin was a pro coach, he would have been gone years ago.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it. And that's like, trust me, we've all seen it with, Joe, unfortunately, you being a Steelers fan, you guys don't know what it is like to change coaches. I mean, you've had,
yeah, that's a good point.
So I'll finish with my Andy Reid one and pivot back to that. The thing is, Philadelphia realized they were going to go no further with Andy Reid, and it just was a mutual breaking up that allowed Andy to go to Kansas City. And since both those guys, both the organization and coach, did that, Andy Reid has won a couple Super Bowls in Kansas City, and the Eagles have won 2 Super Bowls. So it's like both sides won. It's one of those classic cases that both sides win. It's not going to happen every time, but that's probably the best example that we can give. Getting to your guys' point about if this was a pro job, look, I'm a New York Giants fan, man. And I've seen Ray Hanley come and go, Dan Reeves come and go, Jim Fossil come and go. I've seen Tom Coughlin wear out his welcome, Ben McAdoo. I've seen Pat Shurmur. So many. I mean, even my buddies that are Jets fans, it is. It's there. You got to show signs of stability, or else you end up like how Florida has been, how Nebraska has been. That's the thing with college sports, and that's the difference. That will always be the difference between pro sports, Joe, and college sports. In pro sports, your players are almost your constant because you're building around them. In colleges, because they only are there playing for maybe 2 or 3 years max, your coaches have to be your foundation. So if you don't have a solid foundation there, it's hard to get the talent.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this throughout. If they beat Northwestern, maybe it's not talked about next week, but it'll be talked about, if they lose to Iowa, if they lose to Ohio State. I think every loss Penn State has for the remainder of this season, we're going to come back to this. But that's going to do it for segment 3 of Joe and the Fat Man. In our last segment, we'll do something that we've never done before, and it's something that we can only do after a loss. Stay tuned.
Joe, are you kind of glad that we're not going to Iowa now?
Yes.
Jay, did you see what time Iowa is?
What time is Iowa?
Colorado got laid off.
I was about to ask you about that. I didn't he saw him posted on Facebook.
What time's the Iowa game, by the way?
7.
Ooh. What the hell was I gonna? I just had something on my mind. Yeah, Joe. Wait, you've never seen a head coach get fired with the Steelers?
No, Joe. I saw Cowher resign. That's it.
Jesus Christ.
Nobody said. I mean, Chuck Noll was
he retired.
He was partially
retired,
but he officially retired. Yeah. He had worn out his welcome. But
yeah.
I got to pull out these Facebook comments. I just have to find the right post to do it.
I think. Well, no, Cowher ended in a Super Bowl. He didn't really.
No, the year after he won in the Super Bowl, the year before he retired. The year he retired, he went 8-8.
Yeah.
Funny how that year started. It was Roger Goodell's first year as commissioner, and Nick Saban was coaching the Miami Dolphins. And I was at that game.
That's crazy.
All right, we about ready?
Yep.
There 3, 2, 1. Welcome to a new segment of Joe and the Fat Man, Joe Smelter, Kyle Fat Man Golick, Jay Hallahan with you as always. This is something I alluded to at the end of the last segment. This is something that can really only be done after Penn State loses a game. This is Nittany Facebook comments, we're going to call it. So I'll just get into it. I'm not going to reveal the identities of the people who are running this, even though it wouldn't be against any rules to do that. But these people are unfamous, so nobody cares who is saying them. I'll just read the comment, and if it's your comment, you'll know it's your comment. And you can tell people.
We call this mirror now.
And I want to first thank the people commenting, because on the post I'm going to read, 106 people commented. That's pretty good. So I'm going to pick the best ones, and I'm doing this off the cuff. I didn't plan out the ones that I had written ahead, but we're just going to do this. First comment I'll read. You know what was better than watching the game is watching Ed Gein on Netflix. LOL. So after last week, Aller said maybe losing was the best thing that could happen to this team. What a great mindset. Now maybe losing to UCLA will turn out to be the best thing that can happen to this program. Next one, hashtag fire James Franklin. A few comments down below. New team name, the Shitney, SHITKNEE Lions. I get it. I understand the frustration. Sincerely, not so big game James. Boo-hoo. Has Franklin ever heard on putting the spy on the QB? Well, that's not his job. That's Jim Knowles' job. We talked about that earlier. Let's get them next time, boys. The defense quit. If they don't want to play, send them packing. This one's good. They got debacled. Outcoached, outplayed. Sew us a favor. How about next time, coach, you start all the second team and let all the starters just sit and watch? Who knows? Might do better. They have given up. Pathetic. Last week's unprepared performance was bad enough. This was way worse. UCLA beats lowly PSU. The entire coaching staff needs fired immediately. Here's a nice Photoshop of Franklin just like a clown. Here's one of it's Joe Paterno for some reason with a bag over his head. I don't know what that's really supposed to be. Worst defense. What's that?
Is there any ones that have like body parts, pictures of body parts?
No, none of that. We got multiple pictures of Franklin. You got one of him in clown paint, one of him in a clown nose. There's one that says the team is a disgrace. Penn State used to be known for their defense. The defense couldn't stop a bloody nose. To lose to an 0-4 team that fired their coaches last week is pathetic. Penn State became the first top 10 team to lose to an opponent with a record of 0-4 or worse in 40 years. That $54 million buyout, $56 million, guarantees that we will get to experience a Franklin-led team to lose big games and now even the small games. Ha, 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 ha. We are M- ha, 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 ha. Is Rojas playing that good, or do we just suck that bad? Fire the athletic director, too. Is this MFR gone yet? What's the excuse? I think we can end on that. I'll end on this note. Jerry Neuheisel for PSU head coach, please. That's pretty good. It kind of goes on like that. Somebody wrote shameful in all caps, but what are your guys' takeaways there?
I mean, I do the social media, walking around because I'm in several groups, and I you could tell that who were the rage baiters, but overall, a lot of the similar comments, Joe. And this is what James has to realize is those big games, like much like I said in my column, those big game failures define you because it magnifies games like this that shouldn't be magnified. But because you can't win those big ones, when you have a hiccup once in a while, it gets blown out of proportion. I think that's where Penn State fans are right now.
Yeah, and this goes back to the downside of scheduling crap in the non-conference.
Yep.
Agree. I always say you want to have one team that you feel that's like at your level, and then maybe two money games that you can kind of tool on. They had three cupcakes. Like what? Like they shouldn't have even broken a sweat. And it just seems, Joe, that and I'll end this on this. It just feels like everything with this team this year. It seems like the offense is completely different. Like it just feels like there's a whole new offense in there. It feels there's a whole new defense. No one knows what they're doing, and it's just they're not playing to their ability, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, the three cupcakes though, you couldn't even schedule one team that was towards your, even a Power 4 team. Like, doesn't even have to be a top 25 team, like an Oklahoma State, like Oregon played. I mean, someone that at least can block and catch the ball. Well, maybe catch the ball like you can. Yeah, exactly. It gets magnified so much more in a game that shouldn't have even been close.
And if they get tested early, maybe they're more alert for a game like this.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this super episode of Joe and the Fat Man, our second straight post-mortem episode. Maybe it'll beat Northwestern. Who knows at this point? But for Kyle Fatman Golick, Jay Hallahan, I'm Joe Smeltzer. We're signing off, and we'll be back after Northwestern, who I just realized we did not preview at all. But honestly, who gives a damn?
Good night, Canada.